This is Judith Royal, and I'm an archetypal astrologer, sort of a star whisperer. And this is the eve of July 4th, 2020. And I think the celebration of the revolution that formed America, separate from England, is going to feel different this year because I think the concept of liberty and freedom is feeling very different this year. We're 6 months into the new 500-year cycle, and the stars, as a macrocosm, are showing us here the emphasis points. So July 4th just so happens to be an eclipse. It's the third eclipse in a row. It's a full moon eclipse. The sun is in Cancer, and the moon is opposite in the sign of Capricorn. There are going to be some sparkling and rather spontaneous surprises with this. And like all full moons, there will be an illumination of something that you haven't seen before. Along with this full moon illumination, we have two other astrological events that are starting a different kind of momentum for us. One is that we've just had the peak on June 30th of a year-long, well, let's say from the first part of April to the end of November. So it stretches through that time. It's a major event. And what it is Lady Luck sort of sits down and has a cooperative plan made with Pluto, the Lord of the Underworld. He doesn't usually cooperate. It's not his thing. But right now, the energy is towards a transformation of our world. But remember, this is all in the earthy signs of Capricorn. So it's really, to all of us, if we look at it with a more objective eye, we will see that it is simply the natural conclusions of a long process. And by long, I mean at least back to December of 2017. And really, Pluto's been at work on this since 2008. And this is going to help us get a little sparkle and that determination, which brings a wonderful ability to concentrate. I, in particular, welcome that. And so that we're working on the improvement both of ourselves and others by really recognizing and actively drawing down the light from our higher consciousness. Because we have that gift now of this intense concentration, focus, and it's going to help all of us. Specifically, it's a gift in three ways. First, there is the opportunity for spiritual healing through rebirth, through some complete form of regeneration. Secondly, there is energy for channeling very constructive forces during a crisis. And then the third thing is just this clairvoyance and prophecy that we all can tune into, the far-seeing objectivity of Capricorn's mountaintop. So I found it really timely that this particular alignment of stars brought that second thing, the channeling of constructive forces during a crisis. So obviously we're in several crises right now, and so that's a great blessing for us. The other energy that I think if you're really paying attention, you felt this shift because the planet Mars has finished slogging around through the ocean waters of Pisces, and he was really not happy there. And he has, on June 27th, he began what's going to be a momentous trip through his home sign of Aries. It's momentous because usually Mars spends about 6 weeks in a sign, in a zodiac sign, but this time he's going to be in the sign of Aries from now until January of 2021. That's a wow, because he will go retrograde. And this is the summer of retrograde planets. So we are all going to be doing a lot of inner work. And Mars will give us that retrograde phase where we will decide again, we will take a new look at what we want to fight for and how we want to fight. And that will be September 9th through November 13th. Really the time running up to the presidential election in America, and taking us through Election Day, November 3rd. So that's going to be very interesting. With all the retrograde planets, there is also the possibility, the dark side, because it's our choice whether we use the ego or we use our higher minds to make our choices, to make our decisions, to adjust our attitudes. So the dark side of that retrograde phase for Mars would be underhanded and ruthless grabbing of power through, through a warrior, so through fighting the fight. As I look around the world at the uprisings of the revolutionary impulses in our young people and all of us in this world right now, I think we have a different way of fighting. After all, it's been quite a while now that we could have, pushed the button. Somebody could have pushed the button and blown up the whole world. And believe me, with the idiots we have in charge, it's literally, you have to admit, it's a spiritual miracle that we are here. There are forces, thank goodness, with great benevolence and kindness, invisible forces to the body's eyes. They're helping us through all of this. I think of this constant stream of goodwill, help, and comfort sort of emanating from a beautiful celestial choir that any of us can hear anytime we're willing to stop and be quiet for just a moment. And if we're watching just with the body's eyes, we will see, and it's obvious, that there's a lot of destruction going on. But this is the way Pluto brings us the new life, because unless something falls away, that is to say, the walls of the patriarchy crumble, and it does look messy, and it is painful. But unless that destruction happens, there can't be any room for the new to be born. So I'm doing the best I can to practice consciously breaking away from the linear perception and adopting sort of a determined reliance on what I call vertical thinking. That is when any of us stop, and we're just aware that the past is gone, the future has not come yet. And so in the here and now, we can we can practice mindful time travel, right? We travel out of time just for some moments, right? We break away from that linear world of past and future, and I do anyway, attempt to adopt a very determined reliance on vertical thinking, on tuning in to my higher self, to my higher mind, and listening to the energy and the messages from the angels. Because after all, the word angel simply means messenger. And with my tuning into my higher mind, I also get a look, that is some 20/20 vision, of inside my own self, what walls in me are crumbling. Let's use the metaphor and the macrocosm to help ourselves in the inner microcosm, to catch those little dictators in our heads. I ran into one just a few days ago, really kind of surprised me, when someone was giving me some feedback on one of my projects. And as she started to talk, I clinched up like in my gut, right? And I realized afterwards, because she just gave me this wonderful feedback of how much she liked it and so forth, but I was expecting the opposite. I was expecting criticism, but not helpful criticism. I was expecting to be told that I am bad and wrong. Now, I'm many years down the trail here, and it's kind of embarrassing to catch myself still in that old belief system that is really the basis of judgment. So when we can catch ourselves in these old belief systems, then we free ourselves from a judgment, which means we free ourselves, period. And that's the liberty that we can download for ourselves now when we choose our higher self as our guide and not our ego. If you and I do that kind of inner listening, we're going to sail through the summer with all of these retrograde planets. And in fact, this month, July, has opened with Mercury retrograde in the sign of Cancer, traveling side by side with the sun in Cancer. So we do have emphasis on home, on homeland, an emphasis that Cancer would show us of whether or not we feel we've got a sanctuary, a safe place in which we can be quiet, in which we can download the light and send it out to other people. I've had the experience, and I'm sure you have too, of how much happier I feel and how much more helpful I can be on the planet if I look at an event, whether it's on a video or the news headlines, and I just simply do not judge it. I don't get into who's right and who's wrong. I'm not saying I can do that all the time. I definitely cannot, but that's where I'm practicing my vigilance. And I absolutely know for certain that if I suspend my judgment, I open the door to bring light into whatever the event is. And our minds are all joined. There is no question about that. And if I'm watching someone demonstrating in the streets in a foreign country even, and because we have this wonderful technology, she's in my very living room, I'm sort of face to face with her. And even if I weren't, she would still feel my support of peace, my support of a better world, my support of her taking action and saying there is a better way. And frankly, the truth is, it is more challenging for me to do that at home with my own close friends, maybe even my family members, to listen to them or see what they're doing or think about what they're doing and suspend my judgment. Because after all, who am I to know what's right and wrong? The stars can tell us everything we need to know about, well, for example, what is the higher octave calling for this new 500-year cycle? So I keep looking at all the things that happened 500 years ago and challenging myself to think, are we doing that better now? And what is the lesson for us now, the learning that we can draw from that, the wisdom that we can draw from that? And so is a little bit of a laugh when I thought of this one, which is, as 500 years ago, Kepler had the discovery that the sun does not revolve around us, that we revolve around the sun. And that was an amazing discovery back then, really amazing. And now look at us here. If we take that metaphorically, not linearly, we see that that's the very same thing we're doing now. We're saying to ourselves, that egocentric place in us that can think we're the center of the world because we see ourselves, well, constantly, but we often have felt ourselves to be the center of everything that's happening to us. And that is so limiting. That is the kind of seeing that is the eyewitness seeing, notoriously wrong, in the body's eyes. So I want to share two other things before we close today. And one is to be realistic, but not fearful, to be realistic that we are still in a danger zone. The destructive falling apart of the old is definitely not done yet. And so I was saying to one of my groups that, we're wearing masks to be conscientious when we're other people, that we don't spread a disease or catch a disease. And I think we're also going to need some hard hats, because ahead of us, especially starting August the 13th, so I'll be telling more about this in my next forecast, that Mars has gotten this impetus to say, if all steam ahead, and so he's going to take a wrecking ball to old structures that sort of refuse to lay down. They refuse to give in to the inevitable crumbling, and maybe they're trying to prop themselves up with 2x4s. But in any case, it's not going to work. We will see structures, and especially our own inner belief systems, but we'll see structures that look like they were working for many, many years. They've been working. But actually, we now understand that they were rotting from the inside out. They were rotting at the core. I hope you will join me in not trying to resuscitate that. I think we're already doing a great job of that when I look at such synchronicities as, the age-old story, of Trump wanting to build a wall on the border. And then in the news last week, the idea coming forth, not a new idea, but the idea of gathering steam, gathering energy, that we would just have a virtual wall. On July 20th, I hope you will join with friends, you will join with me. It will be a new moon, a new beginning, a wonderful time to set these new intentions for yourself and for the world. It's a new blue moon, meaning we're going to have another new moon in the sign of Cancer. It's calling us home. is calling us to walk each other home. And of course, home is where the heart is. Thanks for listening. See you next time.